Chapter 4. For more than a month after Iqbal's arrival, nothing new happened. The heat got worse and worse, and we worked harder and harder. Hussein Khan moved nervously around the workshop, distributing threats and promises, oily caresses and slaps, all the while wringing his hands and evoking the name of Allah and the Prophet in vain. We old-timers knew only too well that he was expecting a visit from clients, probably foreigners. Our master was worried that the carpets we were making wouldn't be beautiful or perfect enough to satisfy these illustrious customers. He tried endearments, my little ones, little doves, and even my beloved children. He reminded us that he had freed us from a life of hunger and hardship. He begged us not to ruin him, because his ruin would be ours. And then he threatened us with the most horrible punishments. And indeed, when clients were about to arrive, it was easy to end up in the tomb for the slightest mistake. When we stopped working at sunset, we were exhausted. Our fingers bled from all of the cuts the threads made. Kareem was the one who feared Hussein Khan's anger the most. If he was kicked out, what could we do? With no home or family to go to, he'd end up alone in some corner of the souk. So during the day, if we dared raise our heads for a second, we were victims to Kareem's angry outbursts and his threats to tell on us. At night, however, he would take pity on our tears and our tortured hands. He would get up from his pallet and light a lamp, grumbling that we were all good-for-nothings, but that he'd give us some ointment for our wounds. Even if many of us were punished because Kareem told on us, I have to say that he wasn't so bad. We all knew his story. He had been sold to Hussein Khan when he was little more than 7, and since then, Khan's house had become his house too. I think that Kareem was a little fond of Hussein Khan, even though he, too, had slaved and suffered like the rest of us. Now that he was so big, and therefore useless for working on the loom, he was afraid he'd be thrown away like an old, outgrown pair of shoes. We hated him when he got us punished, but we also understood that his destiny might be ours one day, though we didn't think much about the future. The only one who remained untouched by Hussein's storm of threats was Iqbal. He was rarely corrected, and Hussein didn't try false, oily caresses either. He usually just passed Iqbal's loom, checking on the work without saying anything. Iqbal ignored Hussein. He didn't let his attention wander from his work. He didn't cry, he didn't whine, he didn't even make faces or gestures behind Hussein's back. See, chaining's tamed him, sneered one of the boys. No, no, said another. He wants to become the master's pet. I knew that these things weren't true, but Iqbal paid no attention to the comments. Since we shared the same fate and the same kind of life, you'd think we children would feel united, but instead we quarreled and separated into little groups. The big ones always bullied the little ones, as though bullying could change our destiny or make us feel better. Just ignore them, Iqbal would say. One day, while we were trying to catch our breath during our lunch break in the courtyard, Kareem started to put on mysterious airs, like he was about to tell us some secret of the master's. We have to treat our new friend with respect, he said, pointing to Iqbal. He's special. He's precious. I heard Hussein Khan say so to another carpet maker. We were all ears. And what's so special about him? Kareem waited until he was sure he had everybody's concentrated attention. Then he looked around to make sure that Hussein or his wife couldn't hear, shrugged his shoulders, spat in the dust, lowered his voice, and whispered, The rug, the one he's weaving, isn't like all the others. No, it's a blue Bukhara. Ever heard of them? Only 2 are made each year, maybe 3. Hussein said so. I heard him with these very ears. A carpet like that is worth a lot of money, and not just anyone can make one. You need an artist for a carpet like that. Here he stopped and spat in the dust again. Our friend here is an artist. Who would have thought it, eh? All eyes turned to Iqbal. Is that true? We asked. Iqbal was as red as a chili pepper. I don't know, he muttered. Of course he knows, Kareem went on. He's already made one. Hussein said so. He said it. Is it true? Is it true? We asked again. I had 3 masters before Hussein Khan, Iqbal answered. And yes, for one of them, I made a carpet like that. And how did you do it? I don't know. I just copied the design they gave me. We sat there in silence for a few minutes. But if that's the case, said a boy who came from India, then why did your other masters sell you? I don't know, Iqbal said in a low voice. You could see he was embarrassed, and he wasn't happy that Kareem had revealed Hussein's secret. And you, Kareem, you who know everything, do you know why his master sold him, if he's as good as you say? Of course I know, but I can't tell you. The master trusts me and doesn't like me to talk about his private matters. We all snickered at that excuse, and Kareem got mad. Once we had calmed down again, a dark-skinned boy from the south, who had seen the sea, stood up from the edge of the well where he had been sitting. But then, the boy said, then the master will erase your lines. If that carpet is worth so much, he'll cancel your debt. We all nodded. We had never seen such luck. You can be sure about it, cried Kareem. You should see how worried Hussein Khan is that Iqbal won't finish in time, or that he won't do it well, or that he'll make some mistake, and the rug will have to be thrown away. Oh, he'll cancel the debt all right. You know how generous and fair our master is. Many of us had doubts about that, but we observed Iqbal with a new envy. He was going to succeed. Hussein won't cancel the debt, Iqbal said slowly. My other masters didn't. The debt is never canceled. So what hope did we have? Why then did we work from dawn till dusk? What right did Iqbal have to claim such awful things? After all, he was the newest arrival and luckier than everybody else. How could he crush us like that? Even Salman and Ali thought he was lying and that he would be freed. You're a liar, shouted Ali, almost in tears. Salman trembled with anger. In the following days, many of us started to resent Iqbal, saying that he was arrogant and that he sided with Kareem and Hussein Khan. I tried to defend him, but I was only a little girl. I had fallen into the habit of sliding over to Iqbal's pallet and chatting with him almost every night before going to sleep. I didn't believe the mean talk about him, and if the master canceled his debt, well, I'd be happy for him. We would sit in the dark and listen to the city, the sound of the traffic that never stopped, but that at night became dulled and muffled. Sudden voices, the mumbling of a man who hadn't respected the precept of no alcohol, and those mysterious, confused city night sounds that we couldn't identify. We had both been born in the countryside, and there the noises that broke the silence of the night all had a name and a familiar origin. A bird of prey, a buffalo that had gotten free, a stray dog wild on following a scent, and sometimes the rustle of a restless spirit whose mark we would find on the bark of a tree the following morning. We never really feared the spirits because we understood they were a part of the natural world. But we didn't know city life. We'd only caught glimpses of it through van windows when the master took us away from our families and brought us to the carpet factory. I remembered people running from one place to another, more people than I had ever seen before, and they all looked like they didn't really know where they were going. Iqbal could remember more about cities because he had changed masters. Once he had seen dozens of kites dancing in the spring sky. And he remembered a bus, one of those enormous, shiny, multicolored buses we have in Pakistan, full of headlights and taillights and chrome, with horns that blast like a whole herd of buffalo so that they can make their way through the chaos of traffic. It had been the first time he had seen one. Me, said Iqbal. I'd like to get on one of those buses and sit down next to a window and go all around the city, twice even, to see where all those people are running to. No, no, I said. It'd be more fun to go to the cinema and see one of those love stories Kareem tells us about. There are even big, bright posters with the stories and pictures of the actors all over the city. Some of them are so famous that people recognize them on the street. Actors don't walk around in the streets. What do you know about it? Some do. Sometimes we talked about our families, what we still recalled about them, or even what we had already forgotten and would never remember again. I had no recollection of my father, and only a faded image of my mother, but Iqbal could remember everything. He remembered his relatives in his village. He even remembered exactly where things were placed in the hut he lived in. He described to me how his father always got up before dawn to go down to the stream to wash, and then walk toward the stable with his hair still wet. Iqbal confessed that he went over his memories, one by one, every night before he went to sleep, so he wouldn't forget them. "What do you do with them?" I asked. "They help me," he answered. "To do what?" "To get away from here." I didn't want to embarrass him, so I didn't mention the idea of escaping to him again. I thought he had said it to impress me, or that maybe it made him feel better to pretend it was possible. There's nothing wrong with Iqbal believing we'll be free someday, I thought. And I also thought, if only we could. But to escape meant having a place to escape to, and what could I do, outside in a city I didn't know and that frightened me? Who would protect me from all those noises I couldn't even name? I'd probably end up like Kareem, who preferred to stay with Hussein Khan. But still, I'd never tell on Iqbal's plans. Maybe that was why I could never reach the edge of the bathroom window frame. I was afraid of what lay beyond. And why should someone like Iqbal, someone who was about to be freed after paying his debt, why should he want to run away? It didn't make sense to me. So I kept my peace. But 3 days later, just as the foreign buyers were about to arrive, Iqbal didn't keep his.